Hello and welcome to FFRF's Ask an Atheist. I'm Chris Line in the Stephen Uhl Friendly Atheist Studio in Madison, Wisconsin. Today we're talking about the anti-Moms for Liberty, Our Schools USA. In a minute, we'll be joined by our guest, Kristi Hirst from Our Schools USA. But first, I want to introduce my co-host, FFRF's Director of Governmental Affairs, Mark Dann, coming to us from Washington, D.C. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Chris, great to be here, and thanks for having another great show of Ask an Atheist. As always, we want to hear your questions, so either include them in the Facebook chat below or in the email, or and send them to askanatheist@ffrf.org.
Also, just a special disclaimer. Today's production of Ask an Atheist is being brought to you by the FFRF Action Fund, which is the 501c4 advocacy arm of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. FFRF Action Fund develops and advocates for legislation, regulations, and government programs to preserve the constitutional principle of separation between church and state. FFRF Action Fund advocates for the rights and views of non-believers, endorses candidates for political office, and publicizes the views of elected officials concerning religious liberty issues. On our show today, the Anti-Moms for Liberty, we have Kristi Hirst, the Chief Operating Officer from Our Schools USA. Our Schools USA is dedicated to advancing quality public education for all students. It was formed a year ago with the goal to make school board meetings boring again. Kristi is a lifelong resident of Chino, California, which is located east of Los Angeles in San Bernardino County. She attended the local public schools in Chino Valley Unified School District from 1st through 12th grade, then became a teacher in the district for 13 years. Chino Hills is also home to Christian Nationalist Pastor Jack Hibbs and his megachurch, the Calvary Chapel. Hibbs and his congregants launched a campaign to take over local school boards and place on the board ardent Christian nationalists. 3 of the 5 school board members are congregants of Hibbs' church, giving him a personal board majority. We'll hear from Kristi about how she, her organization, and the community fought back. You can find her at ourschoolsusa.org. Welcome, Kristi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I love your work. I really appreciate it. And, a strong supporter of separation of church and state. And I really appreciate all you do. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Great. And we love your T-shirt. I think on Ask an Atheist, you definitely win the best T-shirt contest as well. So very cool stuff that you guys are doing there. So before we begin our discussion with Kristi, we want to hear from you and our with our audience question. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most and 1 being the least, how much of a threat do you think organizations like Moms for Liberty are on secular education in America? Please write your thoughts in the comments section. Keep the comments family friendly, and we might read them on the air. So, Kristi, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in Chino Hills. And before we begin, tell us what Chino is like, and why have you decided to call it home for all of your life?
Well, Chino is very family friendly. I would say a lot of people raise their kids here. As somebody who has gone to school in this district and who lives with a teacher in this district, I felt very confident in the quality of the public education my own children would receive here. So my husband and I actually met as students in this district, and we ended up just putting our roots here. The location is pretty centralized in Southern California. So it's been great in the district. I never worried until now, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how did the Chino Valley School Board candidates and their affiliated with Moms for Liberty, which is considered an extremist group by the Southern Poverty Law Center and Hibbs' church, gain control of your school board?
Well, we've always had sort of a fluctuating school board with some more far-right extremists coming and going. Jack Hibbs has been practicing in our community for quite some time, and he's been known to advocate and campaign from the pulpit for these candidates, which goes really far in school board races and local elections. Historically, school board races are not always paid attention to. So that sort of gave him an advantage because he has quite a large following. And if he endorses somebody, they get a lot of votes, enough in a race where people don't pay attention. So they sort of capitalized on that. Flash forward to, 2020 during COVID, this sort of is what you see across the country. There was this inflection point where COVID sort of catapulted some of these groups forward. You had a lot of people who were so in their bubble trying to deal with COVID that they really didn't see what was happening. And things got far more extreme. 2022 comes, we have the election, Sonia Shah's up for running, and we have a horrible voter turnout. So in her race, she won by 317 votes. The turnout was the worst it had been for a midterm in 10 years. And on top of that, there were 1,400 undervotes just in her trustee area. So that paired with a very large donation to her. She really did not have to do any fundraising on her own. She was given about $60,000.
Keep our viewers kind of in the story. So tell us about who we just put up there. Who is Sonia Shah? And tell us a little bit more about how she fits into the whole Moms for Liberty push.
So Sonia Shah is Chino Valley Unified School District, which covers Chino Hills, Chino, and South Ontario. She is the current board president. She was elected in November of 2022. She's like a Moms for Liberty candidate. When she was running, I was not public then. I was sort of grassroots organizing behind the scenes. And I was watching her get all these trainings and all this help. Leadership Institute, and which is Moms for Liberty's training arm. So Leadership Institute is Moms for Liberty. And I started looking for help on my side for, people who were for public education and supporters of public education. I didn't see anything. So she really was handed exactly what to do the whole process along the way. And I watched all these I didn't know they were Moms for Liberty tactics, but I watched them being used here. So things like inundating the school system with public records requests. That was very commonly used. Inundating the school with bogus complaints that they have to investigate. So that is really a tactic you see used, and that Moms for Liberty actually trains people to use when your board is not controlled by Moms for Liberty or far-right extremist candidates. And that bogs down the system. So the district is sort of overwhelmed with fulfilling those requests, that they're unable to focus on things that need to be done in the public school system. And it's all by design. I mean, not to jump ahead of myself, but the real goal of people who are backing candidates like Sonia Shah is because, to be clear, Sonia Shah is not an anomaly. She is a mouthpiece, and there are Sonia Shahs everywhere across the country. She's not one of a kind. They exist everywhere. And that is, we're sure she is a little louder than some of them, but, she is not the only Sonia Shah that exists. They're across the country.
So as we talked earlier, that it's it's a 3-2 kind of Christian nationalist majority. And so tell us how they're affiliated with Jack Hibbs's Calvary Chapel.
So all three of those members do attend his church. They're his congregates. Four of our 5 members were endorsed by Jack Hibbs. He does put out a candidate endorsement form, and 4 of those members were endorsed by him. During the election cycle of 2022, Sonia Shah was called up on stage during church services. He was telling everyone to pray over her. And I mean, this is not just live. He also puts all of his services on Facebook. So a lot of people see it. So he endorsed her, and you can very much see that they put his policies into place. So Sonia we already had these 2 members that were his congregates on our board, James Nah and Andrew Cruz, and they had been known previously to bring up policies that didn't belong being brought up on the school board, things like abortion. In 2021, James Nah tried to ban transgender students from using the bathroom that aligned with their gender identity, but it failed because he didn't have a board majority. So those policies all were supported, advertised by Jack Hibbs, Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, along with his religious arm called The Real Impact. Then they got Sonia on the board, and they also got another gentleman on the board, John Monroe, who is not a member of that church, but who was endorsed by them. And so James Nah and Andrew Cruz and Sonia Shah, they give her power together. So even if John Monroe might go back and forth, which he has been known to do, the 3 of them stay strong and vote the same always. So those two gentlemen give her the power, and they all three are Jack Hibbs congregants.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's their first order of business?
So when she got on the board, it was quiet for a little bit. She took office in December, and they made her president out the gate. And she is somebody with no background in education, no background really in anything having to do with running a school district or on a board of any kind. So there was sort of a delay. You know, she was figuring things out. You could tell she was very uncomfortable. And in April, they put forth a policy to support AB 1314. And that was a current piece of legislation that was still in committee at our state level in California. And it was basically forced outing. So the policy that we have since adopted, there was a state assembly member who was trying to get it passed at the state level, but it was killed in committee before it ever made it out to get a vote. So they put a policy supporting
that. To identify, so about different names and changing of pronouns, it was a parental notification or forced parental notification. And unfortunately, as we know, a lot of transgender students might not come from the most supportive households, and that could be a serious problem for health and safety of a lot of our students.
Correct. And not to mention it went against, California law and federal laws. So there was that too. It died at the state. And then in June, during Pride Month, they passed a flag ban, not allowing any flag other than the United States flag or the California flag anywhere on campus. So not just on the flagpole, which is something you see more commonly, anywhere, any rendering of a flag, any photograph of a flag. It was obviously to ban pride flags, but teachers couldn't have them anywhere in their classrooms, not small flags, nothing. So that was put into place at the start of this 2023-2024 school year. We saw them ask for anything that promoted diversity or inclusion. People were asked to remove those things as well. So, I personally know teachers that had banners that were, promoting inclusion, and they were asked to remove those. So it definitely branched out further than just flags. You also see Sonia Shaw visited every single campus to check for the flags. She took visits at every site to make sure people did not have flags up.
Wow.
Then in July, they passed their version of AB 1314, forced outing. And what the policy said was that if a student even asked to go by a name or a pronoun that was not on their birth certificate, they would prompt a report to their parents. If they asked to use the restroom that wasn't aligned with the gender at birth, or if they played on a team that wasn't aligned with their gender at birth, all those three scenarios would prompt a report to parents. It was put into place immediately as soon as school started. They passed it July 20th. School started August 6th, I believe, and they put it into place without any real guidelines on the ground. So each site was sort of figuring it out as they went. They ended up making it so that if a student came out, they could take it back. So a student might tell a teacher, this is what I want to go by. The teacher would then warn them that they had to report it to their parents, and the student could take it back. So what my understanding has been, based on, I was a teacher in this district for many years. I did some admin work, so I still have friends across the district, is that obviously students who are truly can be harmed by being outed were not coming out. So
Yikes.
It wasn't forced outing, it was forced closeting.
Wow, that's a lot, and it seems just stuff right out of almost you would read about anti-pride things coming out of Russia. So, wow, that's
it's really straight out of to Project 2025. When you're looking at places that are doing this, and for those who don't know, Project 2025 is, this document that's supposed to guide the next government and the next president if it's not Joe Biden. And everything, it's written by the Heritage Foundation and the Council for National Policy. They're the ones sort of driving it behind it. And they're really the masterminds of everything you're seeing across the country. Sonia Shaw is just a symptom of what they are putting into place. She is a mouthpiece who was supported and helped to take over a school district so that they could litigate some of these policies that they want to implement at the national level. So you see all these school boards across the country being taken over, and they want lawsuits to make it to SCOTUS. So right now, Chino Valley is actually in the middle of a lawsuit. The Attorney General of California filed a lawsuit against Chino Valley Unified School District based on discrimination and harm of their forced outing policy. The judge placed an injunction. So that policy hasn't been in effect since about the third week of school. It was in effect for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yikes.
That policy has been stopped since then.
All right, back to you, Chris.
Yeah, that was great to hear about that. I can kind of let you guys know a little bit more about FFRF's history in Chino Valley. We have a long history there as well. In fact, back in 2015, we actually had to file a lawsuit against the Chino Valley School Board because they'd been praying at meetings, and not just praying, but reports were basically that the school board meetings were looking like religious worship services. So we filed a lawsuit in 2015, and in fact, pretty shortly after we filed that, something like 18 more people came forward to join in on the lawsuit. It was just, a lot of people clearly in the area, were aware and didn't like the school board, promoting religion through their thing. We did end up, after a few years, we won that lawsuit. We have now ended the school board prayer taking place in Chino Valley schools. Unfortunately, there still continues to be issues with these school board members, as you might imagine. In fact, just a couple days ago, we did have to send a letter to the school board's attorney because one of the school board members sent a Bible verse to someone while discussing through their role. Someone had brought up something that the board was doing, and in response to that person writing to the board, I believe it was, I can't remember which of the board members it was. It might have been but
Andrew Cruz.
Oh, sorry, Cruz. Yep, you're right. Thank you. Yeah, it was Cruz had written replied to this person using a Bible verse about it's a very famous millstone verse that it's better to have someone be drowned with a millstone than to sort of lead people away from God. The context of it was very disturbing, and it was sort of a very weird message to be sending using the school board, official school board correspondence. And so we did send a letter to the board about that.
Interestingly enough, Chris, I know the person that got that email, and he also invited her to come to church during that email correspondence.
Yeah, so of course that also as well is inappropriate and not something, obviously the school board members across the country, they're free to be churchgoers. They can go to whatever church they want, do whatever. They can't bring that religious stuff onto the board and use their board position to promote their religion, to promote a church. And more so to kind of what we were talking about before with how Jack Hibbs and his church is endorsing a lot of these school board candidates. He endorses more than that. Just a few weeks ago, I had put out, we had sent a letter because he endorsed we asked the IRS to revoke the church's 501c3 status because he endorsed Steve Garvey in the California primary. Not the first time he's done so. A couple of years ago, we wrote to the IRS because he endorsed Larry Elder. As you said, he's endorsing school board members. Completely inappropriate conduct. As a 501c3, the church can't be doing that. I wrote an op-ed that ran in some papers last week about this, saying that the IRS needs to take action because obviously he's going to keep doing this. He's been doing this. Yeah, and we also know this guy who's doing this. He's very political. He spoke at Congress. Mike Johnson invited him to deliver the opening prayer for Congress. So he's very tied into politics, which he cannot be as a leader of a 501c3 church. They're supposed to be away from politics because they get a tax-exempt status, the same way that FFRF, the 501c3, can't be involved in politics because we're not going to use taxpayer money to do electoral activities, which is also part of the reason why we need to create a C4 is to disengage, not get involved with lobbying as much through through the C3, to keep things separate. That's an obligation if you're a tax-exempt organization not to be promoting, endorsing candidates. So what Jack Hibbs has been doing clearly violates the law, and the IRS needs to take action, otherwise he's going to keep doing it.
And I don't know for many of you who listen to Jack Hibbs, but the same thing for these 3 board members we have in Chino, that they really believe that, there's a difference between being Christian and serving on a school board and being a Christian nationalist. And so what I'm seeing in Chino is that we have 3 Christian nationalists who do not believe in the separation of church and state. Andrew Cruz has even publicly said as much. I hear reports about Sonia Shaw flat out saying she's on a religious crusade. So, these are people that believe that their religious views should be what guides all rules and laws and policies at every level of government. So that, I think, is an important distinction to make too, that, we have these people who think that their religious views should be in charge of policies at the school level, at the state level, and across the board. And that's where, it gets really dangerous. They really want to rewrite our history. And you'll hear them often saying that they think that everything should be done with a biblical worldview. That's something that, Jack Hibbs says a lot, and I clearly see being implemented at my school board level.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, given what you're seeing in Chino Hills, with this Christian nationalist takeover of the schools, school boards, what are the implications for the whole country? I mean, how does this affect more than just Chino Valley?
There is a national effort to dismantle public education, period. They want to fully fund religious schools and institutions. You see this at play currently in Oklahoma. And if you were to read through the education chapter of Project 2025, you would see that they want school choice or expanded voucher systems implemented nationally. And voucher systems that are expanded to that degree, they are able to use them on religious institutional schools. And those schools are allowed to discriminate. They are allowed to choose students. They do not have any accountability. And that's something that they want. All these policies you see being put into place at schools, you will see it and you'll think, this doesn't make any sense. This is not helping the school system. We are distracted with these made up problems, and we're not really addressing real problems our schools have. And that's by design and purposeful. They don't want our schools to advance. They don't want these public education schools to do well. But if you look nationally, that is not a popular stance to take. So instead, they infiltrate school boards and they sort of ruin them from the inside out. That's by design. I don't think Sonia Shaw necessarily sees she's doing that, but the people that direct her, the people she is learning from, absolutely know that's what they're doing. And read Project 2025, you can see it. You have seen Donald Trump flat out saying they will dismantle the Department of Education day one. So that is, there's a lot of evidence that, we can prove that I'm not, wearing my tinfoil hat telling you that there is definitely a plan to dismantle public education, and they're already doing it because they can't just come forward and say, we're going to rip it apart. They have to sort of do it bit by bit, and it's already happening. We are the frog in the boiling pot of water. Are we going to figure it out and get out, or are we going to burn it to the ground? It's a pivotal moment we're truly at. And I think that's something that we're trying to, through my organization, draw more attention to that. Every single district has a school board election this year, every district. Because if Joe Biden loses, or Donald Trump or another candidate like him were to win, our school systems will be destroyed, the public school system. The plans that they have for public education, and again, like my organization has read through Project 2025's education chapter. We have 5 podcasts. We have a podcast called Head of the Class. There are 5 episodes just on their plans for K-12 education. And it is the destruction of public education as we know it.
Let's take a quick pause before we continue with Kristi Hirst from Our Schools USA. Be sure to answer today's audience question. On a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the most, how much of a threat do you think organizations like Moms for Liberty are on secular education in America?
So, Kristi, turning back towards Moms for Liberty, there's a growing perception that public schools are becoming battlegrounds for political ideologies, with some pushing them to the far right that, well, we're seeing in Chino. How does Our Schools USA navigate this politically charged landscape, especially concerning the push from figures like Pastor Jack Hibbs and groups from Moms for Liberty, and knowing how well financed they are?
The finance part is hard. I think that though we're sort of not awake to what was happening. So that's one reason we created Our Schools USA, was to help communities raise awareness, give them resources to do that. Because if people are well informed of what's happening, we see that they take their boards back. We can look back to last year, Pennsylvania. We had a partner and 3 chapters there. And there was a lot of extremism that took over in Bucks County. And you saw them doing very extreme things, and the community was not happy. And we saw that out of the 18 candidates that partner and the chapters chose, they took a clean sweep and they won every seat. And They did this by being vocal, talking in their circles, public communication, using that social media square as a tool. I think that is a very essential part of this, that just seeing and drawing, shedding light on what Moms for Liberty is doing has a huge positive impact on the school board candidates that are elected. So we are really laser focused on getting pro public education candidates who support all families and all community members into positions of power on local school boards. We do that by we train candidates, we train communities to find these candidates, to support these candidates. So we're really focused on keeping our schools laser focused on policies that positively impact public education and protecting our schools at that local level, because that's really what you need. So, back in 2020, a lot of people on the side of public education didn't see this coming. We did not realize what was happening. And now you see a lot of people do. A year ago, not very many people knew who Moms for Liberty was. And I want to be clear, Moms for Liberty, they are powerful. They have a lot of funding. They are not grassroots. They were picked up right from the start. But they are not the only threat to public education. They stepped in and filled a role that these national think tank groups needed filled. They are constantly looking for these mouthpieces to spread their messaging. And Moms for Liberty stepped in and did a really good job of that. This parent rights movement was brilliant, because all parents think they're for parent rights. And I'm a parent and I'm for parent rights. Right. But when they say parent rights, that is not what they mean. They mean controlling everyone. It is not about everyone's rights. It's about controlling everyone based on their very Christian views. So this Moms for Liberty group, they did a great job of spreading, but again, they were well funded and well sourced. But to be clear, if they disappear, their movement is not disappearing with them. There are smaller organizations across the country, in every state, who are doing the exact same thing they are doing. And the money that is backing Moms for Liberty is not going anywhere. So even as we watch people sort of turned off by Moms for Liberty candidates now, and hearing that name and not wanting to associate with them, their movement and their power is not going anywhere. So I think it's important to inform people, yes, of Moms for Liberty, but also of the rhetoric and sort of what Moms for Liberty stands for, so you can identify these far-right extremist candidates, even if they are hiding their Moms for Liberty connection, because that's what we're sort of starting to see. They're hiding that connection. And there is, again, they're all linked back to the Heritage Foundation and the CNP. And I'll tell you, my local school board president, Sonia Shaw, there was a heritage event at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, and Sonia was the speaker. The connection is direct, and this is happening, across the country. The Leadership Institute has put on at least 6 trainings in Southern California in the last 6 months. So just because you don't see Moms for Liberty doesn't mean those tactics and those beliefs and, their policies like book banning. Chino has also passed a book banning policy.
Oh, wow.
The only one in the state of California that lets any community member complain about any book. It is pulled from the shelf immediately. The board has 45 days to review the book, and the board unilaterally gets to decide if the book is pulled from every shelf in the district and banned.
Wow.
Yeah, as you said, this isn't the only place this is happening. Recently, there was a Washington Post article that talked about Patriot Academy, training school board members to fight for Christian nationalist ideas on school boards. Now in the article, they talk about how a school board member went to the academy training, ran, then won a seat at the local school board, Palisades. It's about 60 miles north of Philadelphia. The article speaks about how the current school board president has been able to forge a productive working relationship with Lendo Wenhold, who was trained by the academy. How do you see the situation as similar or different to what's happening in Chino Hills?
I think it's exactly the same. That's a perfect example. That's another group similar to the Leadership Institute who is stepping in and training candidates on how to implement Christian nationalist ideals into school systems. And they are using our school boards to legislate. So California, especially in places like California, they don't have the state level. So they're doing it at the local level. They're breaking laws that California has put into place with the idea of getting that to SCOTUS. And I will tell you, Sonia Shaw and other people who are supporting the current lawsuit out of Chino have said multiple times they look forward to making it to SCOTUS. And this is like how they start to chip away and dismantle civil rights. I mean, there's really a turning back of the civil rights protections we've seen put into place in the last 60 years or further.
And does Our Schools USA teach its candidates how they can help dial down and reduce tensions on cultural issues?
Yes. I think that it's really essential to know how to address the issues using the right language. I think that most parents, when you talk to them, do not want these issues distracting from the real work that needs done in public education, and we just need to inform them of that. Where you see these extremist boards, you see a mass exodus of staff. You're looking at Woodland Park, Colorado is a great example of that. They also had a far-right extremist board take over, and they lost a huge percent of their staff that next year. Chino Valley Unified School District, we have the highest rate of unfilled credentialed openings for the entire year. We still have like 30 openings right now today, which I've never seen. We have already people resigning for the summer. People don't want to work in these boards where there is this far-right extremist push, because what you're seeing happening publicly is not all that's happening. It's not like these far-right extremist boards are, bringing these culture war issues into our district, but then they're also practicing good governance. That's not what you see. They're also not governing well. They don't understand how to budget for a school. They don't know how to look through things that are important and ask the right questions. They are not providing the supports that educators need. They are in fact attacking educators. You see from my own school board president from the dais has said that teachers who don't support her are groomers. Those are things that are being said, and who wants to work for somebody like that?
Mm-hmm. Right, clearly. And also, one of the things that we hope with the FFRF Action Fund, we'll be taking a look more at what's happening in school board races. And we hope in the future we can become a really good partner with you. And we hope we can work together on finding a lot of those very pro-secular public education folks to help, and hopefully turn people who are more in the lines of Sonia Shaw can find other lines of work and things to do with their days with that.
Absolutely, and I look forward to that.
And so for last question, how can people get involved with Our Schools USA and help out?
Well, first of all, we are on all social media platforms at Our Schools USA. You will see we also have chapters at different places, but that Our Schools USA is us. We have a website as well. If you are in a community that needs help, I encourage you to reach out to us. You can either, instant message us, or you can email me at info@ourschoolsusa.org. We can help you set up a chapter in your community. We can provide resources. So we really kind of step in and give help based on where you're at in your community. But we would love to be, in every state. We are across the country, and in 30 states right now, we have chapters.
Fantastic.
Awesome. So we'll just see if we got a couple questions here to close this out. Lala T asks, how do we make churches take responsibility for violating the Johnson Amendment? I can start a little bit with that. Obviously, FFRF has been diligently writing for years to the IRS, asking them to take action. I think that's what we're going to have to do, is that collectively we need to put pressure on the IRS to actually do something, because if they don't start doing something, then this is just going to keep happening. I mean, many churches, clearly Jack Hibbs feels pretty comfortable continuing to violate the law. And, it's hard to see why he wouldn't with the fact that the IRS is not actually doing anything. I mean, in the most recent case with Steve Garvey, we have video from his worship service of him saying, vote for Steve Garvey. I mean, a clear violation, recorded on film. No reason why the IRS shouldn't do something, but they don't. They're afraid, to take action against these orgs because of the pushback they'll get. But if they don't enforce the law, then it's meaningless. So we need to keep putting pressure on the IRS through any means that we can to make sure that they start enforcing this. That's the best way to, get some sort of action on this. We can ask another question. Dan B asks, does California have statewide policies about inclusion, diversity, and equity that would apply to all school districts?
Yes, they do. Yes. But what you're seeing is these school boards, they are fine wasting hundreds of thousands of our tax dollars to advance their political crusade. So that's what's happening right now. And that's why you see that, our district has a current lawsuit that has already cost Chino Valley hundreds of thousands of dollars out of our general funding. And that's money that should have been in the classroom. But these boards that are taken over by these extremists, they don't care about breaking the law and wasting our money. So that's why you see sort of what's playing out going on right now.
Here's one for you. How has the surrounding community responded to your mission and advocacy? Has it been easy to get support?
I think so, for sure. We definitely don't have the same funding that, Moms for Liberty has. So I would encourage anyone who's listening who wants to know how to help. We are a 501c4, but we have a C3 also. So you can donate to us, any way you feel comfortable. And the link's right on our website at www.ourschoolsusa.org. That for sure is something that we need, but the community and the outpouring of, appreciation has definitely been felt. We are represented up and down the state of California, but across the country as well. And I have already seen a huge shift in my local school boards just by having this sort of outspoken group that people can find. Before it was very private. You really need to have a public entity, and people are afraid to do that. But you need that public facing entity to discuss what's happening, because that's the only way you can raise awareness. And I've seen, so much support coming in now for Chino in the community and outside of the community, because people don't like to see students and kids targeted and attacked either.
Yeah, I mean, so you talk about your school district. This is a good question. What are some good ways to support school districts and staff under attack from Moms for Liberty or an oppressive school board?
I would say show up to your board and talk, attend the meetings, talk publicly about what's happening, writing letters to the editor of the local paper, giving speeches at your school board meetings. Even if, the school board's not going to listen to you, media will go back and watch those speeches as well. Talk, and everyone is an influencer, we say. So start raising awareness and talking in your circles. Talk to the parents you see at school, talk to parents you see at, whatever you participate in the community, at church, and start raising awareness for what's happening. Because what you're going to find is most people aren't even aware that's going on. Show support to your board members that are fighting for public education and are fighting to, protect and do what's best for all students. And don't be afraid to criticize the other board members, and don't be afraid to speak publicly, I would say, for sure. But all those avenues can be helpful in your local school boards, and reach out to Our Schools USA.
Here's an interesting question. Have any former members of Moms for Liberty reached out and tried to work with you? Would you ever consider working with former members if maybe they converted, for lack of a better word, or seen the error of their ways? Would you work with them? Of
course, yes. I think that there was a lot of people who sort of joined this movement during COVID. And, we have lots of people who were with us who were with Sonia's movement during COVID. And then they watched her evolve to other issues, and they were not okay with that anymore. And so they work with us now. So I think that it's really important to put this idea out into the world that it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to say, I thought this is what I believe, but I'm learning more and more, and I'm seeing what they're doing, and this isn't okay. It's okay to change your mind. That's great. So that's going to conclude Ask an Atheist for this week. Thank you for joining us, Kristi. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for all your work. I've known about you a long time. And again, as a strong supporter of the separation of church and state, I really appreciate all you do.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate the work you're doing as well. Don't forget, we also have a weekly broadcast TV show, Free Thought Matters. This week, Dan Barker and Annie Laurie welcome lawyer and activist Megan Hatcher-Mays. Here's a preview.
I think we're all noticing is the influence that it's not even so much religion, but people who are weaponizing religion to get the government and the courts to do their bidding for them. And I think if you look at what's happening to the Supreme Court, this pull of the court rightwards is being funded by a network of people who have very deep ties to not just the Catholic Church, but like very extreme right-wing versions of Catholicism. And those are the people who are funding the confirmations for the justices and lower court judges too. They are the ones who are sort of lavishing the justices with gifts when they do things that they like overturn Roe v. Wade. I mean, right after that happened, Alito got a free trip to Rome, which was paid for by a legal clinic at Notre Dame.
And you can see Free Thought Matters on TV stations all across the U.S. and also on FFRF's Facebook and YouTube channels. This week on Free Thought Radio, Annie Laurie and Dan Barker will be discussing the FFRF Action Fund with Ryan Jane and me, Mark Dan. You can find out how to hear Free Thought Radio at ffrf.org/radio. And don't miss the latest episode of We Dissent podcast. FFRF's Rebecca Markert and Liz Cavell join American atheist Allison Gill to discuss the history and principles behind tax-exempt status of churches. Listen and subscribe to We Dissent wherever you listen to podcasts, or check us out online at wedissent.org. If you want more information about the Freedom from Religion Foundation Action Fund, check out our website at ffrfaction.org. And if you're a member, thank you. If not, please join us. See you next week on Ask an Atheist.